The transport ship slowly moved toward the huge space station. Inside the ship, Tammin Park looked out the window at the metal structure floating in space. It was bigger than any city he had ever seen. The Galactic Medical Academy was famous across the galaxy. Today, he and So-Young Kim would be the first humans to study there. "Look at that place," So-Young said, sitting next to him. She was a doctor from Seoul who had worked in busy emergency rooms for 10 years. "It's beautiful," Tammin nodded. He had been a soldier and a medic in the Korean Army. He had seen many dangerous places, but this was different. This was supposed to be safe, clean, perfect. The ship docked with a soft bump. A voice came over the speaker system. It did not sound human. "Welcome to Nexus Station. All new students must report to Hall 7-4 registration." Tammin and So-Young picked up their bags. They walked through the ship's doors and into the station. The hallway was bright white and very clean. The air smelled like flowers and medicine. Other students were walking in the same direction. Tammin stared at them. He had seen aliens before in videos, but never in person. A tall creature, made of blue crystal, walked past them. Its body looked like living glass, and light moved through it in patterns. It did not look at the humans. "That must be a Symphonian," So-Young whispered. "I read about them. They can heal with sound." Behind the crystal, being a cloud of green gas, floated in a clear suit. The gas had no solid body, but Tammin could see eyes in the mist. It was a Mytherian. They breathed different air than most species. A plant-like creature walked on root legs. Its skin was bark, and small flowers grew on its arms. It was beautiful, but strange. All of these aliens stared at the two humans. Their looks were not friendly. "They know we're from Earth," Tammin said quietly. "Deathworlders," So-Young replied. "That's what they call us." They reached Hall 7. It was a big room with a high ceiling. Hundreds of students filled the space. Most were aliens. The humans counted only 12 other people from Earth in the entire group. At the front of the room stood a creature with 8 arms. Its skin was purple and smooth. Each arm moved independently, holding different objects. This was Dean Zeffis, the head of the Medical Academy. "Welcome, students," the dean said. Its voice was calm and deep. "You come from many worlds to learn the gentle art of healing. Here we practice medicine the civilized way." The dean's arms moved as it spoke. One arm pointed to a large screen that showed pictures of the academy. "For thousands of years, the galaxy has perfected medical science. We do not cause pain. We do not rush. We do not use crude methods. Everything we do is safe, clean, and peaceful." The alien students nodded and made sounds of agreement. The humans looked at each other with confusion. "Violence has no place in medicine," the dean continued. "We heal with light, sound, and energy. We use only the most advanced tools. We never touch patients directly unless absolutely necessary." A student raised its hand. It was the crystal creature from the hallway. "Dean Zeffis," it said in a voice like singing glass. "What about the Deathworlders?" The room became quiet. All eyes turned to look at the human students. Tammin felt his face get hot. "Ah, yes," the dean said. "We have exchange students from Earth. This is a new program. We hope to teach them proper medical practices." The crystal student, whose name was Velterra, made a sound like breaking glass. "But Dean, they come from a savage world. Their methods are primitive and violent." Other students began to whisper. The green gas cloud, called Quinn, spoke in a voice like wind. "I heard they cut into bodies with metal knives," Quinn said, "and they touch wounds with their bare hands." A plant creature named Mordock shook its flower-covered head. "Disgusting. How can they call that medicine?" So-Young stepped forward. Her face was calm, but Tammin could see anger in her eyes. "We save lives," she said simply. The room became even quieter. Dean Zeffis raised 4 of its arms. "Please, students, we are here to learn from each other. Our human guests will adapt to our methods." The dean turned to face a new person who had just entered the room. This was Dr. Lyrian, a creature covered in soft feathers. She had wings instead of arms, and a beak instead of a mouth. "Dr. Lyrian will show you our first aid techniques," the dean announced. Dr. Lyrian flew to the center of the room. Next to her appeared a training dummy that looked like a basic humanoid shape. "This patient has suffered injuries," Dr. Lyrian said in a bird-like voice. "Watch how we treat it properly." She began to fly around the dummy in circles. A device on her chest sent out blue light that scanned the dummy from head to toe. First, we perform a complete environmental analysis, she explained. The room temperature must be exactly right, the air must be pure, the lighting must be perfect. The scanning took 5 minutes. Then Dr. Lyrian called for assistance. 3 floating robots came to help her. Next, we check for any harmful substances, she continued. We test the air around the patient. We make sure there are no dangerous energies. Nearby, this took another 5 minutes. Now we begin the healing process, Dr. Lyrian said. We use only the gentlest methods. One robot held a device that sent soft green light toward the dummy. Another robot played quiet music. The third robot sprayed sweet-smelling mist into the AI, or Dr. Lyrian, never touched the dummy. She stayed at least 3 feet away at all times. We must never cause additional trauma, she explained. Direct contact can damage delicate tissues. Sudden movements can worsen injuries. We heal slowly and carefully. The entire process took 20 minutes. When it was finished, the dummies' pretend wounds had closed, but very slowly. Beautiful, whispered Veltara. So peaceful, agreed Quinn. This is real medicine, said more single quotes. Doc, the alien students all made sounds of approval. They clapped their hands, tentacles, or branches. Dr. Lyrian looked at the human students. Do you have any questions about proper first aid? Taman raised his hand. What if the patient is dying right now? What if you don't have 20 minutes? The room became silent again. Dr. Lyrian's feathers ruffled with what looked like shock. Double quotes, dying, ... Right now, she repeated. But that's impossible. Medical emergencies don't happen that fast. Soyoung stepped forward. On Earth, people can die in seconds. Heart attacks, bleeding, choking. We have to act immediately. But that would require touching the patient, Dr. Lyrian said. The voice was full of horror, and using crude tools and causing pain. Sometimes, Taman said calmly, causing a little pain saves a life. The alien students made sounds of disgust. Some moved away from the humans as if they were dangerous. Dean Zephy's raised all 8 arms for silence. Students, it said, we will discuss different approaches to medicine throughout the program. For now, let's move to your dormitory assignments. As the students began to leave, Taman heard the aliens whispering about the humans. They're barbarians. How can they hurt patients and call it healing? Earth must be a terrible place. Soyoung walked next to Taman as they followed the crowd. This is going to be interesting, she said quietly. Tae-Min nodded. He had a feeling their time at the academy would be very different from what anyone expected. Behind them, Dr. Lyrian was still recovering from the conversation. The idea of touching a patient directly had made her feel sick. She had never imagined that beings could be so primitive and still call themselves doctors. The other human students gathered around Taemin and Soyoung as they walked. Did you see their faces? One of them asked. They think we're monsters. Another said, maybe we are, Taemin replied with a small smile. Maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs. 3 days had passed since the humans arrived at the academy. Taemin and Soyoung had attended many classes about proper medical techniques. They learned about energy healing, sound therapy, and crystal medicine. Every lesson was the same. No touching, no rushing, no direct contact with patients. The humans found it hard to understand. In their world, doctors touched patients to find problems. They worked fast when lives were in danger. They used their hands to heal. Today is your first practical exam, announced Dr. Lyrian. She stood in front of the class in the medical simulation lab. The room was white and clean. Body glowed with blue light. Quinn's green gas swirled faster inside his clear suit. Each team will treat a severely injured training android. She pointed to the corner of the room where several human-shaped robots lay on tables. Their arms and legs were bent in wrong directions. Remember, Dr. Lyrian said, use only approved methods. Stay calm, be gentle, work slowly and carefully. The alien students nodded. They understood the rules perfectly. Veltora and Quinn were the first team. They approached their android with confidence. Veltara began to glow brighter. Her crystal body made beautiful singing sounds. His green gas moved in patterns as he worked. He explained, the air must be perfect for healing. She held different colored stones near the android, listening to the sounds they made. Nodded, he was still working on the air around the android. "I need to increase the oxygen level by 2%, he said. The other alien students watched with approval. This was proper medicine. Careful, scientific, civilized. Mordock worked with another plant creature named Silva. "I will prepare the organic healing compounds," Mordock said. Flowers on his arms began to open. Sweet-smelling nectar dripped from them into small containers. "I will grow medicinal moss," Silva added. Green moss began to spread across the ground toward the android. "How long will the compounds take?" asked Dr. Lyrian. 60 minutes for basic healing," Mordock replied. "But the android needs advanced treatment. That will take 3 hours." Dr. Lyrian nodded. "Take your time. Quality is more important than speed." The alien students continued their work. They used scanners, environmental controls, and energy fields. None of them touched the androids directly. They worked slowly and carefully, just as they had been taught. After 30 minutes, Veltara was still calibrating her crystals. Quinn was still adjusting the air. Mordock was still growing his healing compounds. "Humans," Dr. Lyrian called, "you may begin." Taemin and So-Young walked to their android. Primitive Deathworlders would embarrass themselves. Taemin looked at the android for 5 seconds. He could see the fake injuries clearly. "Broken arm, severe trauma," he said to So-Young. "Multiple injuries, bleeding patient." So-Young nodded. She was already moving. Her hands went to the android's neck to check for a pulse. Of course, there was no real pulse, but she followed her training. "Airway clear," she announced. "Breathing stable. Pulse weak but present." The alien students stared in shock. The humans were touching the android with their bare hands. Taemin ignored her. "Bleeding. Controlled," he said. "Need to stabilize the arm." She gently moved it into the correct position. The android's arm made a clicking sound as it went back into place. "Fracture reduced," she reported. "Need splinting material." Taemin looked around the room. He saw a metal tray on a nearby table. He picked it up and bent it into a straight shape. "Improvised splint," he said. He used strips of cloth from his own shirt to tie the metal piece to the android's arm. The alien students watched in horror. They were causing damage with their direct contact. "This is terrible," whispered Quinn. "They're hurting the patient." "Barbaric," agreed Mordock. "How can they touch the wounds directly?" So-Young was now working on the android's leg. She felt along the bone with her fingers, checking for breaks. When she found the problem, she straightened the leg carefully. She announced, "Need to establish for access." Taemin was ready. He had found a training for kit in the medical supplies. "For established," he said, "fluids running." The android's condition lights changed from red to yellow to green. All the fake injuries were stabilized. The alien students stood in stunned silence. They had been working for 40 minutes and had made no progress. Dr. Lyrian fluttered her wings nervously. "That was very fast," she said. "But surely you caused additional trauma." "All bleeding controlled. Airway secure. Circulation restored." "But you touched it directly," Veltara said. Her crystal body was dim with shock. "You moved the injured limbs. You caused pain." So-Young looked at her calmly. "Our hands first," Taemin said. "We used proper technique." Dr. Lyrian examined the android carefully. She used her scanners to check every part of it. After 10 minutes, she looked up with confusion. "The android is perfectly healed," she announced. "All injuries are repaired. Vital signs are normal." The alien students made sounds of disbelief, explained, "People die while you prepare. A heart attack kills in minutes. We don't have time for perfect conditions." "But what about the trauma of direct contact?" asked Mordock. The alien students looked at their own androids, still showing red lights after 40 minutes of work. Then they looked at the human android, perfectly healed in 5 minutes. Dr. Lyrian cleared her throat. "Well," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "this is." The humans had broken every rule of proper medicine. They had worked fast and caused minor trauma. And yet, their patient was healed, completely healed, better than any result she had ever seen. "Class dismissed," Dr. Lyrian announced quickly. As the students filed out, the aliens whispered among themselves. "How did they do that? It shouldn't work. Maybe Deathworlders are different than we thought." Taemin and Soyoung walked together toward the dormitories. Behind them, Dr. Lyrian was still staring at the perfectly healed android. She had taught medicine for 50 years. She had never seen anything like what the humans had just done. For the first time in her life, she began to wonder if the galaxy's medical methods were actually the best way to save lives. 1 week after the practical exam, Dr. Lyrian took her students on a tour of the Academy's lower levels. These were the maintenance sections where the station's power systems and life support worked day and night. Today, you will see how medicine works in different environments, she explained as they walked through narrow metal corridors. Even in perfect conditions like these, we must be ready to help others. The alien students followed behind her. They had been quiet around the humans. Since the exam, Veltara's crystal body stayed dim when she looked at Taemin and Soyoung. Quinn's gas moved slowly in his suit. Mordok kept his distance. The maintenance area was hot and noisy. Giant machines hummed and sparked with energy. Pipes carried steam and coolant through the walls. Workers from different species operated the equipment. "This is Chief Engineer Haxter," Dr. Lyrian said, pointing to a massive insect-like creature. He was 8 feet tall, with 6 arms and a hard shell covering his back. His species, the Thrakri, were known for being strong and tough. Haxter clicked his mandibles in greeting. "Welcome to my domain, young healers. These machines keep your pretty academy running." The students looked around with interest. They had never seen the station's working areas before. Everything was clean and organized, but much different from their sterile classrooms. Suddenly, a loud alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed on the walls. "Coolant leak in Sector 7, announced a mechanical voice. "All personnel evacuate immediately." The peaceful tour became chaos in seconds. Workers began running toward the exits. Steam poured from broken pipes. In the ceiling, a sweet chemical smell filled the air. "The coolant is toxic," Haxter shouted over the noise. "Everyone out now!" But as the group turned to leave, there was a terrible cracking sound. A massive pipe burst open above them. Green liquid poured down like a waterfall. Workers who could not escape fast enough were caught in the toxic stream. 5 maintenance workers collapsed on the metal floor. The green coolant covered their bodies and pooled around them. Some were unconscious, others were screaming in pain. Haxter tried to reach them, but more pipes burst. The chief engineer was hit by a blast of steam and coolant. His huge body crashed to the ground near the other victims. "Emergency protocols activated," Dr. Lyrian announced, trying to stay calm. "All students follow evacuation procedures. We will call for the medical team." The alien students began to back away from the toxic area. Veltara held up her crystal scanners, but they could not work through the thick steam. "I cannot get proper readings," she said, her voice shaking. "The environment is too dangerous." Quinn's gas swirled nervously. "We need environmental suits and proper scanning equipment, and a sterile treatment area. The medical team will need 30 minutes to prepare," Mordok added. "They have to bring protective gear and set up a clean room." Dr. Lyrian nodded. This was proper procedure. Wait for the right conditions, use the correct equipment, follow safety protocols. But Taemin was already moving toward the injured workers. Dr. Lyrian called, "You cannot go in there without protection." Taemin ignored her. He pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth to filter the toxic air. Soyoung was right behind him, doing the same thing. "The coolant will burn your skin," Velt warned. 30 minutes and they'll be dead," Soyoung replied, stepping into the green liquid dot. The alien students watched in shock as the humans entered the dangerous area. The toxic coolant reached their knees. Steam burned their exposed skin. The chemical fumes made their eyes water. Tae-Min reached the first worker, a small purple alien with tentacles for arms. He was unconscious and covered in green coolant. "Breathing is shallow," Taemin announced. "Pulse is weak. Chemical burns on 60% of his body." He lifted the worker out of the toxic pool and carried him to a slightly safer area. Soyoung was already working on another victim. "This one has coolant in his lungs," she called out. "I need to clear his airway." She turned the injured worker on his side and used her fingers to clear toxic liquid from his mouth. The worker began to cough and breathe better. "You are contaminating the patients," Quinn protested from the safe area. "They are already contaminated," Taemin replied. He was using torn pieces of his shirt to wipe coolant from the workers' faces. This is about keeping them alive. The biggest challenge was Chief Engineer Haxter. The massive Thruckery was unconscious and barely breathing. Green coolant had gotten into a crack in his shell, and it was poisoning him from inside. His breathing is blocked, So Young diagnosed. The coolant is in his throat. Taemin looked around the maintenance area. He needed to make an airway, but he had no medical tools. Then he saw a maintenance laser cutter on a nearby workbench. "Are you insane?" Dr. Lyrian screamed. "You cannot use industrial tools for surgery." Taemin picked up the laser cutter and a piece of plastic tubing. "It is sterile. The laser burns clean." He knelt next to Haxter and found the right spot on the engineer's thick neck. The laser made a small, precise cut. He inserted the tubing to create an artificial airway. Haxter's chest began to rise and fall normally. Air could now reach his lungs. The alien students stood frozen with horror. They had just watched a human perform emergency surgery using a construction tool in a toxic environment. "That was butchery," whispered Valtora. But Haxter was breathing. His body color changed from gray back to healthy brown. So Young was working on the other victims. She used maintenance cloths to clean their wounds. She made bandages from torn fabric. She used water from a coolant pipe to wash toxic chemicals from their skin. By the time the official medical team arrived, with their environmental suits and sterile equipment, all 6 victims were stable. The humans had saved every life. The medical team's leader, a tall blue alien, stared at the scene in disbelief. "How did you treat them without proper equipment?" he asked. "We used what we had," Taemin said simply. His skin was red from chemical burns, but he was still taking care of patients. But the contamination, the improper tools, the unsafe environment. "They were dying," So Young interrupted. "Perfect safety is not an option when people need help right away." The medical team began moving the victims to their sterile treatment areas. But they discovered something surprising. The humans' improvised treatments were working perfectly. The burns were healing well. The airways were clear. All vital signs were strong. Dr. Lyrian could not speak. She had watched her students break every safety rule in medicine. They had used crude tools in a toxic environment. They had touched contaminated patients with bare hands, and they had saved 6 lives that would have been lost waiting for proper procedures. Haxter was the first to wake up in the medical bay. The plastic tube was still in his throat, helping him breathe. "The humans," he whispered to Dr. Lyrian, "they came into the poison to save us. They did not wait for safety." The alien students gathered around the medical bay windows, looking at the recovering workers. All 6 were alive and healing. "I do not understand," Valtora said quietly. "Their methods are wrong, but the results are right." "Maybe," Quinn said slowly. "Being wrong is sometimes more right than being right." Dr. Lyrian looked at Taemin, So Young, who were being treated for their own chemical burns. They had risked their lives to save others. They had ignored safety to prevent death for the first time. She began to think that the galaxy's perfect medical system might not be perfect. After all, the emergency in the maintenance sector had shaken the entire academy. For 3 days, the faculty held private meetings. The alien students whispered in the hallways. Everyone was talking about what the humans had done. Dean Zephy's called an emergency council meeting. The academy's top professors gathered in the council chamber, a grand room with tall windows showing the stars outside. "We have a problem," the dean announced, its 8 arms moving nervously. "The human students have violated every rule of proper medicine." Dr. Lyrian sat at the long table, her feathers ruffled with stress. They used industrial tools for surgery. They entered a toxic environment without protection. They touched contaminated patients with bare hands. Professor Kethren, a mechanical being made of metal and circuits, spoke in a digital voice. Their actions were reckless and dangerous. They could have made the situation worse, but they did not, said a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Chief Medical Officer Exandra. She was an ethereal, an ancient species that looked like living light in a humanoid shape. She rarely spoke in meetings, but when she did, everyone listened. "The humans saved 6 lives," continued. "All victims have recovered faster than our models predicted." "That is beside the point," Professor Kethren argued. "Medicine must follow proper procedures. We cannot allow barbaric methods in a civilized academy." Dr. Lyrian activated a holographic display. It showed video footage of the humans working in the toxic maintenance area. "Look at this footage," she said. "They ignore safety protocols. They use primitive tools. They cause unnecessary pain to patients." The professors watched the video with expressions of disgust. They saw Taemin using a laser cutter to perform surgery. They saw So-young cleaning wounds with dirty water. They saw both humans risking their lives in the toxic environment. "Horrifying," whispered Professor Dalmuth, a slug-like creature. "This is not medicine. This is violence." "I agree," said Dr. Lyrian. "These humans should be expelled from the academy immediately." But Chief Medical Officer Alexandra spoke again. "Before we make this decision, perhaps we should ask the humans to explain their methods." Dean Zephy's considered this. "Very well. Bring in the human students." Taemin and So-young entered the council chamber. Their skin still showed red marks from the chemical burns they had suffered while saving the maintenance workers. They stood calmly before the professors, not showing fear or shame. "You have violated every principle of modern medicine, Dean," Zephy said. "How do you justify your actions?" Taemin looked at the assembled professors. "We saved lives. That is what doctors do." "But your methods were crude and dangerous," Professor Catherine protested. "You used improper tools. You ignored safety procedures." "We used the tools we had," So-young replied. "We followed the first rule of medicine: do no harm. Letting people die when we could save them would be the greatest harm of all." Dr. Lyrian stood up, her wings spread wide. "But you caused pain to the patients. You contaminated them with your direct contact. You performed surgery in an unsterile environment." Dr. Taemin said calmly, "May I tell you about Earth?" The room became quiet. The professors had heard stories about the Deathworld, but never from someone who lived there. "Earth is not a safe place," Taemin began. "We have diseases that change and grow stronger every day. We have animals that can kill a human in seconds. We have weather that can freeze you or burn you or blow you away." He walked closer to the table of professors. "We have earthquakes that can destroy entire cities. We have storms that can sink ships. We have fires that can burn for weeks." So-young joined him. "Every human learns basic first aid as a child. We have to help might not come for hours or days. We cannot wait for perfect conditions when someone is bleeding to death." "But surely your world has proper medical facilities," Professor Dalmuth said. "Yes," Taemin agreed. "In the cities. But what about the mountains, where people climb? What about the oceans, where people fish? What about the battlefields, where soldiers fight?" "Our medicine evolved to work anywhere," So-young explained. "With any tools, in any conditions. Because on Earth, death does not wait for the perfect moment." Chief Medical Officer Alexandra leaned forward with interest. "Tell us more about these conditions." Taemin thought for a moment. "A human heart attack kills in 4 minutes. A severed artery kills in 2 minutes. A blocked airway kills in 30 seconds. We do not have time to set up sterile rooms and perfect equipment." "But what about preventing contamination?" Dr. Lyrian asked. "We clean what we can," So-young said. "We sterilize when possible. But sometimes a dirty bandage that stops bleeding is better than a clean bandage that arrives too late." The professors looked at each other with confusion. This was completely against everything they had been taught. "You are saying that crude methods are better than advanced medicine?" Professor Catherine asked. "No," Taemin replied. "We are saying that the best medicine is the medicine that saves lives. Sometimes that is advanced technology. Sometimes that is a stick and some cloth. But the trauma you cause to patients," Dr. Lyrian protested. "The pain of your direct methods, which is worse?" So-young asked. "A moment of pain that saves a life, or no pain but the patient dies." The room became very quiet. The professors had never thought about medicine this way before. Chief Medical Officer Alexandra spoke again. "I have reviewed the medical records of the maintenance workers. All 6 have healed completely. No infections, no complications. Recovery time was 50% faster than normal." Professor Catherine processed this information with electronic sounds. "That does not make sense. Crude methods should produce inferior results unless," Alexandra said slowly, "the methods are not actually crude. Perhaps they are simply different." Dean Zephy's moved its arms thoughtfully. "What do you mean?" "The humans have developed medicine for a hostile environment," Alexandra explained. Their methods appear primitive, but they are actually highly specialized. They are designed for speed, efficiency, and adaptability. Dr. Lyrian's feathers ruffled, but they ignore safety protocols. Do they? Exandra challenged. Or do they follow different safety protocols? Protocols designed for their world. Timene nodded. On Earth, the biggest safety risk is waiting too long to act. Every second of delay increases the chance of death. While in our galaxy, Soyoung added, you have the luxury of time. You can prepare perfect conditions because your worlds are safe and stable. The professors began to understand. The humans were not ignoring safety. They were following safety rules for a much more dangerous world. Your methods work because your environment demands them, Exandra concluded. The question is, could these methods be useful here as well? Dean Zephes considered this carefully. What are you suggesting? Perhaps, Exandra said, we should study human medicine instead of dismissing it. Perhaps there is wisdom in methods born from such a challenging world. The council chamber fell silent as the professors thought about this possibility. Could the barbaric humans actually teach them something about healing? Finally, Dean Zephes spoke. We will not expel the human students. Instead, we will observe their methods more carefully. We will try to understand how they work. Dr. Lyrian looked unhappy, but she nodded in agreement. However, the dean continued, you must also learn our methods. This is an exchange of knowledge, not a replacement of one system with another. Taemin and Soyoung bowed respectfully. We are here to learn, Taemin said, but we hope you will learn from us as well. As the meeting ended, the professors filed out with much to think about. The humans had challenged everything they believed about medicine. Chief Medical Officer Exandra approached the humans as they prepared to leave. Tell me, she said, what is the most important tool in human medicine? Taemin and Soyoung looked at each other and smiled. Courage, they said together, the courage to act when others cannot. Professor Kethrin was not satisfied with the council's decision. The mechanical professor spent days analyzing the human success in the maintenance sector. His digital brain could not accept that primitive methods worked better than advanced technology. I will prove that human medicine is just luck, he announced to Dr. Lyrian. I am designing a test that will show their methods are inferior. 2 weeks after the council meeting, Professor Kethrin called all students to the Academy Emergency Simulation Complex. This was the most advanced training facility in the galaxy, capable of creating any emergency scenario. Today, you will face the ultimate medical challenge, he announced. His metal body gleamed under the bright lights. I have designed a scenario that will test every skill you have learned. The simulation chamber looked like a crashed spaceship. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from broken equipment. The sound of alarms created constant noise. Your mission, Professor Kethrin explained, is to treat multiple casualties in a hostile environment. You have limited resources, dangerous conditions, and time pressure. He gestured to the simulated crash site. There are 8 injured crew members inside. Toxic atmosphere, structural instability, equipment failures. And you have exactly 60 minutes before the ship explodes. The alien students looked nervous. This was much harder than their usual practice sessions. The alien teams will go first, Professor Kethrin said. You may take whatever equipment you need from our medical supply room. Velterra and Quinn volunteered to be the first team. They spent 20 minutes selecting equipment. Atmospheric processors, crystal healing arrays, environmental suits, sterile field generators. Their equipment filled 3 large carts. We are ready, Velterra announced. They entered the simulation chamber with confidence. But within minutes, problems began. The atmospheric processor could not work in the toxic air. Quinn's environmental suit began to leak. Velterra's crystal healers could not penetrate the thick smoke. The conditions are too hostile, Quinn reported through his radio. We need to improve the environment first. They spent 30 minutes trying to clean the air and stabilize the area, but the simulation kept adding new problems. Equipment malfunctioned. The structure became more unstable. The toxic levels increased. Time remaining 15 minutes. Professor Kethrin announced Velterra and Quinn had reached only 2 of the 8 casualties. Their careful methods were too slow for the emergency conditions. Simulation failed, Professor Kethrin declared. Next team. Mordok and Silva tried next. They brought different equipment, focusing on organic healing compounds, but they faced the same problems. The hostile environment disrupted their methods. Their compounds could not work in the toxic atmosphere. They saved 3 casualties before time ran out. 4 more alien teams attempted the challenge. None saved more than 4 casualties. The simulation was designed to be impossible for traditional medical methods. Now, Professor Catherine said with satisfaction, the human team will attempt the same challenge. Taemin and Soyoung approached the equipment room. The alien students expected them to spend a long time selecting supplies, just as they had. Instead, the humans quickly gathered basic items: bandages for fluids, simple tools, pain medicine. They filled 1 small bag. "Is that all?" Professor Catherine asked, surprised. "This is enough," Taemin replied. The humans entered the simulation chamber. The toxic smoke immediately attacked their lungs. Sparks from broken equipment burned their skin. The unstable floor shook under their feet. But instead of fighting the environment, they adapted to it. So Young tore strips from her shirt to make masks that filtered the toxic air. Taemin used pieces of the crashed ship to create shields against the sparks. They reached the first casualty in 30 seconds. Severe burns, possible internal injuries, Soyoung diagnosed quickly, stable but critical. They moved him to a safer area using a piece of metal as a stretcher. No time for perfect comfort, just enough care to save his life. The second casualty had a blocked airway. Taemin cleared it with his fingers, ignoring the toxic substances. The casualty began breathing normally. Next patient he called the alien. Students watched in amazement as the humans moved through the simulation. They did not try to fix the environment, they worked within the dangerous conditions. When their medical scanner broke, Soyoung diagnosed by touch and observation. When their sterilization system failed, Taemin used fire from the burning ship to clean his tools. "That is contamination," Valterra protested from outside the chamber. "That is adaptation," Chief Medical Officer Alexandra replied. She had come to watch the test. The humans found creative solutions for every problem. They used debris as splints. They made for stands from broken ship parts. They turned the crash site itself into a medical facility. By the 40-minute mark, they had treated all 8 casualties. Everyone was stable and safe. "Impossible," Professor Catherine said, checking his instruments. "The scenario is designed to be unsolvable. Time remaining, 20 minutes, the computer announced, but the humans were not finished. They had organized the casualties into a triage system, with the most serious injuries receiving continuous care. They had created a safe zone using shipwreckage. They had even set up a communication system to call for evacuation. "Simulation complete," Professor Catherine announced. "All objectives achieved." The alien students stood in stunned silence. They had struggled to save for casualties. The humans had saved all 8 with time to spare. "How?" Valterra asked. "The conditions were impossible." Taemin and Soyoung emerged from the simulation chamber. Their clothes were torn and dirty. They had burns from the sparks and coughs from the toxic air. But all 8 simulated casualties were alive. "You tried to change the environment to fit your medicine," Soyoung explained. "We changed our medicine to fit the environment." "But your methods were so crude," Quinn protested. "You used fire to sterilize. You made bandages from clothing. You used ship debris as medical equipment." "Did the patients survive?" Taemin asked, simply. "Yes, but then the methods worked." Professor Catherine ran diagnostic tests on all his equipment. There must be an error. The simulation was perfect. It should have been impossible to succeed. Chief Medical Officer Alexandra approached the mechanical professor. "Perhaps the error is in your assumptions. You designed a test to prove human methods would fail, but you based it on human methods being primitive. Are you saying they are not primitive?" Professor Catherine asked. "I am saying they are specialized," Alexandra replied. "Specialized for the most challenging conditions in the galaxy." She turned to address all the students. "What we witnessed today was not luck. It was expertise. The humans have spent thousands of years developing medicine for impossible situations." Dr. Lyrian, who had been quiet during the test, finally spoke. "I do not understand how they work so well in chaos." "Because we trained in chaos," Soyoung answered. "On Earth, emergencies are chaotic. Equipment fails. Conditions are hostile. Resources are limited. We learn to succeed anyway. But how? Do you know what to do without proper scanning? Valterra asked. We observe, we listen, we feel, Taman explained. Our hands can detect things your scanners miss. Our experience tells us what to prioritize. Morduk's flowers wilted with confusion. This changes everything we know about medicine. No, Chief Medical Officer, Exandra corrected. This expands everything we know about medicine. She looked at Professor Catherine. Your test was successful, but not in the way you expected. You have proven that we need to learn from human methods. Professor Catherine processed this information with electronic sounds. His mechanical mind struggled to accept that he had been wrong. What do you propose? He asked finally. Integration, Exandra announced. We will create a new curriculum that combines our advanced methods with human emergency techniques. The alien students looked at each other with excitement and fear. Learning human medicine would be difficult and uncomfortable. But they had seen the results. Will you teach us? Valterra asked the humans quietly. Tae-Min and So-Young smiled. We will teach you to heal in any condition, with any tools, in any emergency. But first, So-Young added, we must teach you the most important lesson. What is that? Asked Quinn. Sometimes the best medical equipment is courage, and courage cannot be scanned or calibrated. It must be chosen. The alien students nodded slowly. They were beginning to understand that becoming better doctors meant becoming braver people. Professor Catherine looked at his failed simulation with new understanding. He had tried to prove human methods were inferior. Instead, he had discovered they were revolutionary. 3 months had passed since the simulation challenge. The Galactic Medical Academy had changed in ways no one expected. The sterile white hallways now echoed with new sounds. Students practiced emergency procedures with urgency and purpose. The gentle music that once played constantly had been replaced by the focused energy of learning. Today was the final presentation day. Each student had to show what they had learned during their time at the academy. The main auditorium was filled with professors, visiting doctors from across the galaxy, and even some government officials who had heard about the revolutionary changes. Dean Zephy stood at the front of the room, its 8 arms moving with nervous energy. Today, our students will present their final projects. This year has been unique in the Academy's history. The first presenter was Valterra, the crystal being approached the podium, her body glowing with confidence. Just months ago, she had been disgusted by human methods. Now she looked different. Her crystal formations had changed, becoming more angular and practical. My project is called Rapid Diagnostic Techniques Using Primitive Senses, she announced. I have learned that advanced scanners are not always available in emergencies. She demonstrated her new skills on a volunteer patient. Instead of using crystal resonance devices, she used her hands to feel for injuries. She listened to breathing patterns with her enhanced hearing. She observed skin color changes with her eyes. This patient has a broken rib, she diagnosed in under 30 seconds. Internal bleeding in the abdomen, mild concussion. All detected without any scanning equipment. The audience murmured with surprise. Valterra had learned to diagnose like a human doctor, using direct observation and touch. But the most important thing I learned, she continued, is that sometimes you must act without perfect information. Waiting for complete data can cost lives. She stepped down from the podium. To applause, the other alien students looked at her with respect and amazement. Quinn was next, the gas being floated to the front, his green mist swirling with determination inside his clear suit. My project is resource optimization in emergency medicine, he announced. I have learned to work with whatever materials are available. He demonstrated by creating a complete medical kit using common items. A maintenance tool became a scalpel. Cleaning cloths became bandages. A food container became an IV bag. Human doctors taught me that medical equipment is just tools, Quinn explained. The real medicine happens in the mind and hands of the healer. Any object can become medical equipment if you know how to use it. He showed how to perform CPR using atmospheric pressure changes, how to stop bleeding using his own gaseous form, how to provide oxygen to patients by sharing his own clean air. I used to think that medicine required perfect equipment, he concluded. Now, I know that perfect medicine requires perfect adaptation. The audience was impressed by his creativity and resourcefulness. Mordok presented his project on psychological resilience in medical practitioners. The plant being had studied how human doctors dealt with stress and trauma. Human doctors see death and suffering regularly, he explained, yet they continue to work with hope and determination. I wanted to understand how they maintain their mental health. He had learned meditation techniques that humans used, breathing exercises, mental preparation for difficult cases, ways to process grief and loss while still functioning as a healer. The most important lesson, Mordok said, is that caring for patients requires first caring for yourself. A doctor who breaks down cannot help anyone. Other alien students presented similar projects. They had all learned different aspects of human medicine, emergency surgery techniques, trauma psychology, battlefield medicine, disaster response, but they had also taught the humans. Taemin had learned to use crystal healing for chronic pain. So-young had mastered atmospheric therapy for respiratory problems. The exchange had benefited everyone. Finally, it was time for the humans to present their project. Tae-Min and So-young approached the podium together. They looked different than when they had first arrived. Their uniforms were modified with practical pockets and emergency supplies. They moved with the confidence of teachers, not just students. Our project is called Integration of Galactic and Human Medical Systems, So-young announced. We have spent 3 months learning your methods and teaching ours. They demonstrated a new type of medical procedure that combined both approaches. Advanced scanning technology to diagnose precisely, then rapid human techniques to treat immediately. We use your crystal resonance for pain management, Taemin explained, but we combine it with direct pressure to stop bleeding. We use your atmospheric controls for breathing support, but we clear airways manually first. The result was medicine that was both advanced and practical, gentle when possible, aggressive when necessary, high-tech when available, improvised when needed. But the most important thing we learned, So-young continued, is that medicine is not about choosing between different methods. It is about using every method available to save lives. She gestured to the alien students. Your students have learned our emergency techniques, but they have also kept their own specialties. Valterra can now diagnose in seconds and heal with crystals. Quinn can work in any environment and control atmospheres. Mordok can treat trauma and grow medicines. They are not becoming human doctors, Taemin added. They are becoming better versions of themselves. The presentation ended with a demonstration. A complex emergency scenario where alien and human techniques worked together. Valterra S. Instant Diagnosis, Quinn's environmental control, Mordok S. Psychological support, Taemin's surgical skills, So-young's trauma management. The patient was treated faster and more completely than ever before possible. The audience rose to their feet in applause. Even the government officials looked impressed. Dean Zephes returned to the podium. 3 months ago, I thought these humans would learn our civilized methods and abandon their primitive ways. Instead, they have taught us that there is no such thing as primitive medicine. There is only effective medicine and ineffective medicine. Chief Medical Officer Alexandra joined the dean on stage. Today, the Galactic Medical Academy announces a new curriculum. All students will learn both traditional galactic medicine and human emergency techniques. The announcement caused excited murmurs throughout the audience. Furthermore, Alexandra continued, we are establishing exchange programs with Earth medical schools. Human doctors will teach here, and our doctors will train on Earth. Dr. Lyrian, who had been the most resistant to human methods, stood up to speak. I must make a confession. When these humans first arrived, I thought they were barbarians. I could not understand how they could call their violent methods medicine. She paused, her feathers ruffling with emotion. But I have learned that courage is not barbaric. Adapting to save lives is not primitive, sometimes the most civilized. The thing you can do is fight death with everything you have. She looked at Taemin and So-young. Thank you for teaching us that gentleness is not always the answer. Sometimes mercy requires strength. Professor Kethron, the mechanical being who had challenged the humans, also spoke. My digital brain was programmed to value efficiency and precision. I thought human methods were chaotic and unpredictable. But I have learned that chaos requires its own kind of precision. Unpredictability demands its own type of efficiency. He turned to the audience. These humans have taught us that medicine is not just science. It is also art, the art of making the impossible possible. As the ceremony concluded, the new Academy motto was unveiled on the wall behind the podium. Written in hundreds of galactic languages were 3 simple words: adapt, improvise, survive. Belterra approached Taemin and Soyoung as students began to leave. "Will you really teach us?" she asked. "Will you?"